Bienvenidos al Museo de Trenes del Sur de California en la ciudad de Perris. Espero que este video sea de su completo agrado. Comenzamos.
I stopped here so you can take a look at these tracks. You'll notice there's three sets of rails.
Yeah.
The widest two, or the two that are furthest apart, is what all railroads run on today. That's called standard gauge, 4 foot 8.5 inches. Now the one on the inside to the one furthest away from it, that's 3 foot 6 inches wide. We call that narrow gauge. There's also another narrow gauge that's 3 foot wide. The reason they made smaller tracks or narrower tracks was so that they could make tighter bends going through places like the Sierra Nevada mountains. Now I'd like to show off this one car here.
Yeah.
This one right here, the 189-783.
Yeah.
It says Asociación, Topeka, and Santa Fe. That's because in 1889, the California Southern Railroad ran into financial difficulties and they filed for bankruptcy and then later sold that entire railroad to the Asociación, Topeka, and Santa Fe. This car that you see is the only one that remains from the original California Southern Railroad. This car was a tender. What it tended, I have no idea. Some people say it tended this crane, but this crane is a whole lot younger than this one. This was about 1886. The big round cylinder thing you see there is the boiler. The big tank is the water. And this other one over here was the diesel fuel. So they would burn water, burn the diesel fuel, make hot water for the steam. Now the other thing I want to show you is real quick. If you look out here and turn, look out here and you see all that gray stuff that's kind of just hanging?
Yeah.
Well, that's hanging on a tanker. That tanker is made out of wood.
Wood?
So it's a wooden tanker. So what do you think it was that they hauled in a wooden tanker? Why wouldn't it be steel? Okay, give up? I'll tell you. Back in the day, when they hauled stuff in steel, vinegar was very caustic to it. So they used to haul vinegar in that car. Right here, this was built in 1924 by the Pullman Company. This is a rail post office. Years ago, before they had the freeways and all this stuff, the way your mail went from one town to the next was someone at your post office put your mail in a bag, took it out to the railroad, and hung it on a hook. It'd be hooked up here. And as the train went through town, they would open up that door, raise the hook up like this, grab that bag, and sort the mail. Now when this was in operation, 12 people worked inside here. They were all employed by the U.S. Postal Department, not the railroad. One of the items that they had to carry with them every day was a 38 caliber pistol.
Oh,
Yes, sir. Now, all those little squares that you see, those are towns, post offices, mail drops, whatever you want to call it. And they had to sort the mail so they could get it to the right town to deliver the mail. If you worked in here, once a year you were given a test. They gave you a muted amount of mail and a time limit. And you had to sort the mail within that time limit and get 97% correct or you didn't work. Now that's as the train is going this way and going this way, okay? They did not have enough time to take the letter and go to Temecula. Hem it. They had to learn to go like this and flip it. This is the 1926 sleeper car. So it's just like the airplane. Is she with you?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So it's the same thing like an airplane. You buy a ticket, you got row 9, seat A, B, C, or D. So you sit down and you're traveling. When you got up in the evening to go to the dining car, the porter would come through and make up your beds. That makes into bed. This makes into bed. Same thing on the other side. Now remember, every bed was for 2 people.
oh wow.
So let's walk down here. These are not California Kings. Take a look. Each bed here is just for 2 people. I think they're a lot smaller back there.
A little smaller.
Now this is a dream for all you guys in here. Welcome to the ladies' room. This is the ladies' bathroom. The men's was up front. There are 2 toilets in here and there's 3 sinks. This could go 90, 95 miles an hour. The only problem is they were really expensive because they're made out of aluminum. And they really started to seriously market these things in 1940, but in December of 1941. Now, how many of you are familiar with Southern California? You know where Baker, California is?
Oh yeah.
We found this in Baker.
Oh, wow.
She was sitting on a siding for 43 years. They used it as a storage shed. What do you think it was they stored in this thing? It's right there on the box.
Suitcases.
Nope, dynamite. So this is 1885. Now this is not the oldest car in the collection. Excuse me. The oldest car in the collection is 1879, and it's way down there in a building we can't get into. This car was built in 1956. It is, if you'll excuse me, let me get through here real quick. It is a United States Army kitchen car. This is the car that was built so that they could prepare meals for soldiers coming back from war that were wounded. However, in 1956, we weren't at war with anybody. So the Army contracted to have 10 of these made. They were made. They took delivery, and this has been sitting up at China Lake. Never been used. All 10 of them never been used.
Wow.
We could get into a discussion about wasteful government spending. Now these stoves are coal-fired, but like I said, they've never been used. It's kind of cool. What we did is we brought this in about 3 years ago, and because the outside was rusted, we painted it. But this inside is all original, 1956. These seats were called suicide seats.
Who's that?
Now when a woman sits, she's prim and proper, right? But guys, when we sit, we kind of get into it, don't we? We kind of do one of these numbers. So when the car came into the station, these doors would automatically open and the guys would fall out and commit suicide. So because of that, they installed these. These are called trundle steps. As long as these steps are depressed, the electric motors that open and close the doors won't activate. Even today, you'll hear step to the center of the car so they can open the door. That way they know it's safe to open the door and you don't fall out and commit suicide. Kind of cool, huh? This is second generation Pacific Electric streetcars. This thing is really old. It's all wood. The first generation streetcars, they're all gone. But this is by Mr. Huntington of Huntington Beach, Huntington Library. He built the Pacific Electric system. Back in its day, you could buy a ticket in Los Angeles, and with transfers and all this, you could ride all the way out to Lake Elsinore. This is third generation. Yeah. This one we just brought in about 4 months ago. They evaluated to see if it's worth restoring. Apparently, they've decided it's worth restoring because they've started to restore it. But this one has been restored. You can go inside. This one's a combination car. Combination car. And then all that information was stored in this guy right here. That's an ancient computer, but that tells you how many fares that were collected on this. Now, if you want, turn around.
Wow.
Turn around and take a look. This was restored by volunteers. It took them 13 years. It looks almost brand new, doesn't it? Kind of cool. This has everything in your house except 3 things. Doesn't have a computer table, doesn't have a TV, and it doesn't have a microwave. It's got everything else. It's got a shower, it's got a wine locker, it's got compartmentalizing steam on the floor. Built in 1914, it has air conditioning, it has a thermostat. It's incredible.
Where can we buy one?
Yeah. Emma 2, or Emma, Nevada, or Nevada Central number 2, yes. Emma, Nevada was a real person. This is her picture right here. She was an opera singer in Europe back in the late 1800s. She would sing operas in Europe, but once a year she'd come back to Reno and she'd put on an opera. Now, what connection Mr. Kimball had with Emma, Nevada, I have no idea. Built in 1881, Southern Pacific Railroad. After so many years of service, they retired it. It was bought by a Mr. Martinez. He put it on his property, and this became his house. And the story is, all 7 of his children were born on this end. So after Mom and Dad passed away, the kids came down and donated this to the museum and asked that we tell the story, but we never touch it. That's kind of cool. This was also built in 1881. You look up at the top, that brass-plated chandelier, that was 1881. The wall was installed in 1882. And then down here, the 2 nickel-plated kerosene lanterns were hung in 1882. If you look inside, you'll see this whole thing is intricately carved. The ceiling covering is mohair, rabbit fur. So this is 108, 1963, I believe it was. Now, it's entirely up to you guys, but if you want, I am authorized to let you go in this cab. And this is kind of a letdown. I mean, I ran heavy equipment, and I have all kinds of levers.
That's a big engine.
So if you look at this, all these, each one of these right here is a cylinder. So the piston runs here and connects to the main bearing. You can count the number of cylinders, and this is a V, so it's twice. Okay. It's a 20-cylinder engine. You have that.
Okay.
Have any idea why they put an F on there?
That's the front?
Yes, sir. Because in the yard, it gets confusing if you have the cab up front, or the cab in the middle, or the cab in the back. When the guy says, roll ahead 5 feet, because the cab's in the back, he may back up. So they put the F on here to tell you where the front is. And if you ever know an engineer, check out his bedroom slippers. Because across the toe of the slippers, he's got TGIF. Stands for toes go in first. This one we just finished painting up. And then they shut us down for COVID. This is built, I believe, 39. Now, you notice the difference. This was built for passenger service. These were built for freight.
Okay.
The freight could go slower, but it could pull more weight. This was built for speed. So a lot of these, you'll have 2 engines, and on these they'll only have 1, but because they were built for speed. In fact, all these locomotives that are in here are operable. We do take them out on the weekend. We have a yard master. He's the one who tells us which one to run on each given weekend. I forget what they call this. Some of these have different names, like there's alcoves, all this good stuff, but I forget the name of this one. But there are only 2 of these locomotives remaining in the world today. One of them, I forget where it's at, but it's all pretty, but it doesn't go anywhere because it can't run. This one runs. It's the only one left in the world of this type that still runs, and we take it out on the weekends periodically. It was a movie made in 1952 by MGM Studios. In the movie, there was a lot of singing and dancing, and it starred Debbie Reynolds, Gene Kelly, and Donald O'Connor. A lot of singing and dancing.
I don't know, singing in the rain?
There you go.
Ah.
Singing in the rain. It was a house. The original trucks or axle and wheel assembly are missing, so we put it on this flat car. I've never been inside, but trust me, the first chance I get and I see it's safe, we're going through it. 1879, that means all this stuff was done by hand.
Wow.
But that's cool. This is the last streetcar that remains of the expo cars that ran for Balboa Park Exposition. We found it, and again, it was the guy's house. This whole thing, on the sides, the front and the back, the roof was in the wooden shingles. It took us 2 full weekends just to pull the shingles off. Took a lot of dry rot damage and termite damage. This paint, someone painted it prior to, but if you walk over here, you can see back in 1878, Congress passed a law saying that you can't haul livestock any longer than 32 hours. After 32 hours, you have to pull off from the siding and let them get out and let them graze. So they hired cowboys, drovers, to do all the work of unloading and load them back up. This car used to haul sugar beets. They would load it up with sugar beets, and when they get to the processing plant, this side here from that rail down opens up, and the whole car tips. That way they can dump out all the sugar beets. It built in 1957. You just finished your snowing this a year ago this Christmas. I was out here 2 days before Christmas, and I was way out here. And I heard this loud noise. And I looked back here, this thing was just coming out of the barge, and it is loud. Now, it's got a real high profile on it. That's because the diesel engine that's in here has 2 crankshafts. They oppose each other. So diesel doesn't fire by spark, it fires by compression. So the pistons come together and compress it, it fires. The diesel engine in here is called a Fairbanks Morris. Those are the diesel engines that powered the submarines during World War II. So after the war, they had all these diesel engines left over, and they said, what are we going to do? Well, let's build a locomotive. Fairbanks Morris. That's the diesel engine that propels this. That's it. So they just started to restore this guy.
As you can see, it's very rotten. Unfortunately, it just drops out the bottom, and all we have to do is pop in a new one. And here's the boards over here. Custom milled at 4 3/4 by 6, number 1 Douglas fir. You know these mechanical drawings, that's the wood grain. That's the heart of the tree.
Okay.
So you can get yourself related. And most fortunate to have these drawings. And this is our engineer's drawings. The piece is yet to be fabricated.
Bueno, mis amigos, esto es todo por el video de hoy. Espero haya sido de su agrado. No se olviden de compartir, darle like y suscribirse a mi canal. Nos vemos hasta la próxima.